All right, we're live. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're here with another Coffee with Cobb. Today we'll have a discussion about uh, some new technology of whether you're knowledgeable or not. Try to give you some more insight on paperless forms. We're going to help you formulate better ways of collecting, managing your data, time, and money for your business. Today, the presenters are going to be Mark Klein, myself, Christian Baycoat, and Michael Young. And we'll take about 20 minutes to discuss paperless forms and how they can help you in your company. And from there, I'll hand it off to Mike. Mike, you ready?
I am. Hello, everyone. Thank you for visiting us again this week. We're definitely excited to be back. When you look at the first slide here, it should come as no surprise just what type of impact forms have on our daily business lives. You know, as you can see here, as much as 85% of business processes are going to depend on those forms. Now, when we start to think about the different ways that we handle forms, they're really broken down into two different categories. And those are either going to be digital forms or they're going to be paper forms. So before we kind of dive into kind of the differences and the pitfalls of paper and the benefits of digital, it's really nice for us to kind of start out and kind of figure out where all of you out there right now are as an organization around your forms. So when we start at the top here, everything up there is going to be far more manual. It's going to be those paper processes. And that means that even if they start in digital form, they're going to need to be printed, filled out, and then scanned back in or manually entered. But as we start to work our way down, they become much more efficient in the way that we handle them. So many organizations are going to have forms available on their websites. Some of them are going to be able to process them through their websites. And then, you know, when you start to look at dynamic forms, you know, they'll even start to walk people through the process as they go and start to make selections. And then the ultimate level of efficiency with forms comes down to integrating with backend systems like ERPs, CRMs. Now, before we begin, I want to kick it over to Mark right now, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, to kind of walk us through what dealing with paper forms looks like.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Christian. Glad to be back on another Coffee with Cobb session. It's been a few weeks, but I'm excited to talk about dynamic forms, paperless forms. And really looking at this slide, it's really no surprise that when we look at this list, you know, paper means labor list, really the amount of time you spend, how much time a person spends or an organization spends dealing with forms. And as we know, time is absolutely money. And, you know, just picking out a couple of these things on this list, it takes so much time just to manually fill out a form today. It takes so much time to file that form away. It takes a lot of time to locate a form. Is that form sitting in a file cabinet somewhere? Is it sitting on Karen's desk somewhere? Maybe it's in her drawer and I have to dig through her drawer just for the fact that I have to find that piece of paper. But when we take paper out of the equation, it really opens up the opportunity for an organization to boost productivity, enhance accuracy, and probably eliminate manual steps. And most important, I feel, is that human error. Let's eliminate human error and let the form work for us. Make it a smart form, right? And, you know, before we dive into how paperless forms can benefit any organization, we really need to start identifying what is and what isn't a paperless form. So as we move on, to identify what a paperless form is, you know, a true paperless form starts and ends in a digital format, in an electronic format, and it never requires anyone to print it. It doesn't require someone to print it and sign it and scan it. It doesn't mean that we need to, you know, print it, scan it, and send it to a document management system or a folder store somewhere. It truly begins and ends in its original digital format. And so as we begin to dive into paperless forms, it's really important that we outline the different types for clarity. And so we need to understand how forms are shared, how they're handled, and how differently they're all processed. And what I'd like to do is kind of kick it over to Mike, if you don't mind, and kind of talk about, those different types of paperless forms.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mark. So, we have so many different forms flowing through our organizations right now, but really when you kind of break them down, they really fall into one of two categories. It's either going to be an internal form, which is only going to be used within the organization, or it's going to be an external form that's going to need to be accessed by those outside your organization, like clients or partners that are going to need to access that information. Now, perfect area for us to kind of showcase the differences between them or something that we should all be familiar with, right? Everybody on this call has been hired before, so we've worked our way through onboarding with human resources. An example of an external form would be an application for employment. You are not hired yet. So you may go online and fill out that application and submit it, and it ends up going into a system for them to access. Now, once you're hired, some of those internal forms are going to become available to you, whether it be paper or digital form. It may be a direct deposit, your direct deposit information you need to put in there, or an employee equipment inventory list if they give you a laptop and a phone and various other things. And of course, an emergency contact info form. So if your company likes to have parties that have adult beverages and you decide to do something really awesome that wasn't very smart, they know who to call if you injure yourself. So, Mark, I want to kick it back over to you so you can kind of walk through what the key features they should look for when they're looking at paperless forms.
Cool. Yeah, perfect. So as we kind of move on, doesn't it make sense to take our original paper form and just convert it to a digital form? And I'm not talking just taking a form and making it a fillable PDF, because that's not really a living, breathing form with a pulse. But if we can take that original paper form and turn it into a digital form where an end user has that familiarity, that certainly would bring a high user adoption with any organization or any enterprise. And so what we start leveraging is some other techniques inside the form to make it truly dynamic. Some of those things are making sure that the data that we're filling into the form is accurate data. Using your CRM and leveraging that data to validate that the form's filled out correctly. Those are some of these, let's have a pulse on our form, let's make it a live dynamic form. Let's also think about what are we doing with the form? So we get it filled out, but we also have to think about, where does it go now? And what does that workflow look like? Who does it go to? And what tasks does that individual have to partake in? So those are all things that we can look at when we talk about a living, breathing form, opposed to just a paper form that we have to kind of hunt down in our environment. I know Christian has a background in data and using data to push and pull between platforms. So I'd like to just kick it over to Christian real quick to kind of walk us through that portion, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. So dynamic forms, as Mark just mentioned, can be used to utilize data or databases or systems that you have central to your business, whether if you have a CRM or ECM or both. Those dynamic forms can help utilize that and ingest data or bring in data from an external form, or to utilize data with your internal forms through like HR, or if you're having a customer fill out something on your website. This is something that is very real time. It gives you more of a interactive experience in taking in this data or putting data out there for you, your employees, and your customers. So you don't have to wait for somebody to print this off or to sign something. You can get it all back within real time, either through email or through those databases or your ECM systems that you already have in-house, and take advantage of that. And all of this can be done with dynamic forms on your phone, tablet, laptop, desktop PCs, whatever devices you have on you or in your organization. And to speak further on some of the benefits of more benefits of dynamic forms, I'm sure Mike can help us out with that as well.
Thanks, Christian. At the end of the day, it's really about, creating better collaboration, making sure these forms flow through your organization, basically leading you through the process, getting in the right people's hands at the right time. And once that happens, once we make that conversion from paper to digital, as we've learned, probably during our last 3 or 4 Coffee with Cobb segments, when you take the paper out, it becomes much more secure. And security is so paramount today. When it comes to government forms like I-9s, W-4s, I can't help but think of looking back at all the times where, a corporate office will give you a call and say, hey, listen, I need you to go in your filing cabinet and get rid of all these old forms and print new ones. You don't need to do that anymore. It's going to be the most current there at all times. And kind of within that, it allows you to support all those major compliance and security mandates along the way. The last thing that's so critical for any organization is the visibility and accountability that you'll have by being able to track these forms the whole way throughout their life cycle. So, it really allows you to manage these forms no matter where they go. So, Mark, I think the next step, now that we've kind of addressed, most of those major benefits, is kind of to talk about the mobile aspect of these forms and how they can impact an organization.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So, as you've most likely heard us mention, if you've attended any of our past or previous Coffee with Cobb presentations, we've talked a lot about agility, and it's such an important piece of the puzzle, especially when we're talking about forms and mobile forms, dynamic forms. This agility piece really combines 2 worlds together, especially in the form space. And, as we kind of talk about paperless forms, it's critical for an office or even an office on the go to have mobile access to forms. And as we kind of dive into that a little bit, having an external workforce, having folks out in the field and giving them immediate access to a place where they can fill out information on an iOS device, an Apple device, or an Android device, or any type of tablet is really a huge productivity boost. Meaning that if I went to a customer's location and I want them to fill out a sales order, for instance, well, wouldn't it be nice to have that sales order already pre-populated from my CRM, if you will, with all the demographic information, customer name, location. I mentioned location because if we are using a mobile device, it has location services. So we immediately know where this form lives geographically. Beyond that, when we fill out the form, we'll also have an understanding of when the digital signature, or if I sign with my finger or a stylus, when that signature and where it took place, what geographic coordinates did that happen? And we really can get a pulse on where our workforce is. Once that form's filled out, whether it is that sales order or if it's, an Uber Eats form or any other type of form like a work order, once we have all that data on the form, we immediately can submit that information to our corporate office. And the old way would be I fill out the form, now I have to drive to the corporate office, I have to drop off the form, make sure the right person gets it. But in a true digital workflow, I really just hit a submit button on the mobile device and the data can be transmitted immediately to the corporate office, and that way they can perform the actions they need to take. I always get the question of, what happens if I'm in a rural area, and there's so many rural areas in Virginia that don't have a connection to the internet? Well, these forms can all be preloaded and can be worked offline. So those forms, same concept, I can still work on the form, have my customers fill it out, have the employee fill it out And as soon as I get an internet connection, that transmittal of data will happen immediately. So that's where that agile piece comes in. You know, what's better for that business and the employee makes everything more productive, right? So what I mentioned is looking at, as we move on, as we look to a return on investment when we talk about forms, there's a lot of independent analysts out there. One that we mention often is one called AIM. That acronym stands for Association for Intelligent Information Management. And based off a lot of different studies that they've taken, they've kind of wrap their arms around this statistic here, where 60% of users have experienced the return on their investment when they actually use paper-free projects and paper-free platforms, and they see those results within the first 12 months. That's pretty astonishing. It's not a large investment to get into, and the return is beyond most companies' expectations. Obviously, and we've talked about it, but just to kind of sum it up, with paperless forms, faster response to your customers, higher employee productivity, those are two of the biggest benefits. And again, saving trees and breathing, right? So all of those things come into play, and we like to save money and time. So that kind of wraps up our presentation here. However, we do have a couple other things to announce. So I'll let Christian go ahead.
Sure thing. So we have a couple of things to announce before we get to the Q&A section for today. Our next week's episode is going to feature Jeff Blunt, who some of you may know if you've attended any previous Coffee with Cobbs, and Jeff Bolton. He's our network administrator, but he's also the master of our domain, literally. And they'll be offering up some do-it-yourself tech support to kind of like help troubleshoot any possible network or computer issues you may come into contact with. And then the episode after that is the Power of Print Embellishments, and that'll be hosted by or presented by David DiGiacomo and Travis Brigham, and they're going to offer up some possible advanced printing options that may be out there and available for your organization internally, or if you offer up any print services, some options to add that to your repertoire as well. And without further ado, we'll get to the Q&A section, and it looks like we have some frequently asked questions that we usually get when we interact with the customer. So I'll blow that up a little bit here. And so the first one is, will I have access to create and modify my own forms easily after being implemented? Mark or Mike,
yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. Sure. So the short answer to that is yes. However, we always like to align ourselves with clients and get a better understanding of the level of comfort and control they would like with their forms. Right. We can give them a small toolkit, we can give them a large toolkit, but however they feel comfortable, our end users are always creating and modifying their own forms after initial training. They can certainly call on us and we'll support them in any way. If they prefer to delegate all the work to us, we'll certainly take that on. We're happy to do it, but the short answer is yes on that. But there's a lot that goes into forms and really consulting on the best package and best platform for them.
Okay, and that brings us to the next question. When you mentioned package, how much can anyone expect to spend on a forms package for the company?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first question I usually ask. So I'll go ahead and grab that one. I mean, forms packages can start as low as $400. Now, those are going to be the most simplistic packages that are available. There are some factors that are going to increase the cost, the number of forms, volume, complexity of integrations, and that's really where the expense comes in. The best path for receiving an accurate budget would be a consultation. Personally, I'd want a number that is as close to the real number as possible so I can make the best decision for my business. So if that's something you would like to learn more about, we'd love to partner with you to provide that number.
All right. And the last question I'll take care of, can I take a photo and embed it into a form? Short answer is yes. With majority of these platforms that you can create interactive or dynamic forms with, is completely white labeled, meaning it looks like your company internally has taken some developer and built this thing with your company logo and your branding all over it. So you can indeed put photos that are either interact with some data on the back end or just has your logo or what have you. It's usually all very agnostic for your company.
And Christian,
do you mind if I?
You got that, Mark?
Yeah, if you mind if I add to that. So wouldn't it be cool, to piggyback off what Christian's saying, wouldn't it be cool if, a patient comes into a healthcare facility and maybe the intake person at the desk is filling out the form, they require a signature, so the patient signs it with a stylus or, however we're doing it today with our finger sometimes, but at that same time, take a picture with that tablet of that patient coming in, right? That would be a good application for that. Maybe it's in the service industry or professional services industry where someone goes out to a job site and they want to take, a before and after picture and attach it to their work order. Well, that's a perfect application for the mobile workforce.
Yeah, it's something you can't really do with paper and by themselves with, like, say, a camera phone or an external camera. If you all have a tablet that you can bring it out with, you can do everything from one application, including that phone.
Maybe a very manual.
A Polaroid.
Right, be very manual at that point.
Correct.
Definitely. Another practical application that we see is in manufacturing and logistics with bill of lading, where all the bill of ladings for a truck driver could get preloaded on a tablet. And as the truck driver needs to validate that they have the right goods on their truck, the traditional way is with a piece of paper, and I have a bill of lading for every load. But we can do it all on a tablet, and all they would need to do is sign once and not have to sign 50 times on 50 bill of lading. So a lot of practical applications for mobile forms. We mentioned human resources. It could be in accounts payable. Mike, if you want to step in and kind of.
Yeah, and a couple other items to kind of add in there that we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but think about how much faster you can get paid for your services, right? Like with paper, you have people coming in, picking up things at the beginning of the day, they hit the field, they have to take that paper and either deliver it by hand or scan it, email it, send it. By the time you get that signature on that tablet or phone, that information could be sent out, and it's time to get that in your accounting system and try to get paid, So, who doesn't want, their cash flow moving faster? I think we all do. It makes us more buoyant.
Right. Are there any other questions, Christian, that came in?
Yes. So we got 2 here, and I think there's still some coming in. The first one is asking, can I bring form data into a document management system from my website?
Yeah. Short answer, yes. Yeah,
to spell it out a little bit, you can most likely embed that form that you've created outside of the website into the website to bring that data through that customer-facing application.
That's a great question. I love that question.
Let's see, we have another one asking, is it possible to fill out forms on a mobile device?
Yes. Of
So
course.
we did. Yep, we covered that. We covered that towards the end, and I see that question
fill that on somebody else's mobile device
towards the beginning. But absolutely, so we absolutely can do mobile device, tablet, iOS, Android.
Yeah. Maybe even Windows phones.
Maybe.
If they still exist,
out there that have them.
All right, and I think that is all the questions that we have today. Yep. So that is all the questions we have for today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And if you have any further questions, you can contact us at coffee@cobbtechnologies.com, and we can either answer those questions through that email address, or if you want to inquire further about what software is out there and available for you all to utilize for your company, we'll get you in contact with the correct person, and we'll move it along from there. So thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
And see you next week.